These are the darkest things to happen at Disney and Universals. I thought it was only fitting, since we spent a day in Epic Universe in Orlando, Florida, that I would talk about this. This list was way darker than I expected it to be, though. And no, we're not going to talk about the 13-year-old boy that fell out of the log ride at Tiana's Bayou, because he did that on purpose. Everybody knows it. I wish the news articles would change their story from boy fell out to boy jumped out, because that's what he did. It was a prank, and he was going to try to jump into the log that was behind him. He missed. There's been way more deaths and like crazy accidents than I'd realized. Some in pretty recent years. Like there's going to be a few on this list that just happened in the last year or two. But the first one was probably the most horrific one. I'm going to give you a little bit of a trigger warning. This was in 2016, and it happened at the Grand Floridian Resort. That's one of the Disney resorts. And it happened to a 2-year-old little boy. They always say if you're in Florida, just assume that every body of water has an alligator in it. Just go ahead and assume that. Well, this family unfortunately did not assume that, or did not know this rule, and they were playing in a little lagoon lake type thing out by the Grand Floridian Hotel. That was part of the site, the facility. Well, the 2-year-old little boy was about ankle deep in the water when a alligator did come out of the water and grab him and pull him under. His dad, was a super big hero, trying to immediately jump in and save him, but unfortunately it was too late. His body would not be recovered until the next day, when they were able to get a dive team to find him at the bottom of the lake. The dad probably scared the alligator, so the alligator did not eat him. They were able to recover his body. Coroners did confirm, though, that he was killed by crushing damage and also a mixture of drowning. I just couldn't imagine how awful that would be as a parent, to watch your 2-year-old because this was at nighttime too. This was in the dark. I could not imagine seeing your kid just get taken into the darkness and then just being gone. And then just the silence that would have been hanging over this lake after that happened. There's no way I could even go to bed that night and just continue to live on. I don't want to think about that one. And that is the darkest one that's on this list. Before we do some more of the recent ones, I'm going to do a really old one. This happened in 1974, and it was at America Sings within the Magic Kingdom Disney Park. Now, America Sings was not actually even a ride. It was just like a theater type deal where you went and sat down, and you'd watch all these different animatronics come on and do their little thing, and they would like spin and stuff. Well, the stage would rotate, revealing several different stages. Like the stage was one big circle. Well, where the stage rotated at, it met a wall in a corner, and one of the 18-year-old cast members was actually working the ride, was standing there by that wall. And when the wall started to rotate, it actually pinched her between the rotating stage and the wall, and in front of everyone, it crushed her against the wall. You would hope it's quick, but this thing, I watched it in action, how it rotates. It was probably extremely slow and just slowly pulling her in there, and no one could do anything but watch. After that, the ride did get some kind of a sensor system to stop anything from, if anything like got in that gap, it would automatically shut the ride off. But unfortunately for Deborah, it did not get shut off in time. This next one happened just last year in the park that I visited today, Epic Universe and Universal Studios. And this park just opened last year. It actually opened in May of 2025, and this happened in September of 2025. And there was a 32-year-old man that was killed on the Stardust Racers roller coaster. It was ruled that it was not the park's fault. It was his fault in this case. I guess the ride had some limited handicap accessibility. If you could move yourself from your wheelchair to the ride, they would allow it. But they are not medical professionals. They are not put out there to know exactly what is wrong with everybody or to be the judge of this. There's clear warning signs literally everywhere, and they come over the loudspeaker every so many minutes and say, don't do this if you have these problems, etc. He got on the ride, and I guess he lacked some kind of like upper body muscles in his back to stop him from jolting forward whenever the roller coaster that goes up to 62 miles an hour comes to stops. And this thing stops and starts really fast. It does several like jet shoot-offs. And essentially what would happen is he was fine on the shoot-off, but when it would stop so abruptly that his body would just sling itself forward, and he was actually hitting his face on the metal bar that holds you into the seat just over and over again. So by the time this ride was over, he was unresponsive, and he did pass away from this. And it was from blunt force trauma directly to the face and head. His girlfriend was right next to him the whole time, and she noticed on the first stop that he did hit his face, and it knocked him unconscious pretty much right away. It was a horrible story to listen to her talk about how she was trying to hold his body from slinging itself around because he was unconscious like seconds into the ride. And the ride kept going for another 2 minutes, and he just kept getting slammed around, and she wasn't strong enough to hold him. She was screaming out for them to stop the ride. Of course, everybody on these rides screamed, so no one thought anything of it. And then it was evident to everyone what had happened essentially right after the ride stopped. The most notorious one on this list, though, was in 1984 at Disneyland, which is the California Disneyland. Disney World is the Orlando, Florida one. So it was on the Matterhorn, 1984. There was a lady who, to this day, they don't know if the restraints failed and she fell out of the ride, or if she removed the restraint somehow and got herself out of the ride. So that is still up for debate. People believe both ways. Either way, she came out of the ride, and if you haven't been on the Matterhorn, it is a doozy and it is a steep, fast drop. When she got out of her bobsled, which is what they call the cart, the other bobsled behind them ran her over because she jumped out of the first one or was flung out of the first one, still up for debate. And the cart ran her over, and it pinched her head or her neck next to the rail, and it did decapitate her. That is the most notorious one on this list. I grew up in the 90s, and I remember I came to Disney World as a kid, and literally everyone was like, I am not riding that thing. And they were still talking about it a decade later. Like, everybody's like, I'll not ride that ride. That lady got decapitated. And I remember hearing that as a kid, and then now as an adult, it brought back those memories when I was looking up the stories. I could not imagine the trauma of, like, everyone there if they saw it or if they were in the cart that hit her. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's kids all over this place, right? It's a wild thing to me, okay? Now, stay with me here, because this is where I'm just like, are you being serious? Not only did they not close the park down when that happened, a lady gets decapitated, and they were just like, okay, just close this one ride off and don't let anybody come over here. The very next day, that ride was also reopened, which means they had to go to their custodial staff and be like, hey, can you literally clean like her blood and brains off the walls so we can run this ride again tomorrow? Like, we ain't stopping. There's no way they were able to do an investigation quick enough to even know if she got out of the restraint or if the ride failed. They don't know that. Even like if you look it up right now, to this day, they do not know which happened. Did it fail or did she fall off? And they were willing to put you and your family on it less than 24 hours later, again, after somebody cleaned up. If you all did not know, I looked it up today. Disney World, the parks, make between 35 and 40 million per day. If you want to look this up too, it gets wilder. The movies that you know and love, all the Disney movies that have came out after Disney World opened, only exist to drive you to the parks. The parks make so much more money than all of the Disney movies and all that other stuff combined. Like, so that's the reason why when you see these movies like flop, like Disney has been flopping left and right with movies here lately, this is why. They do not care. Okay, if they get a $200 million flop on a movie, they make that in 4 days here. 35 to 40 million per day. These theme parks are a money-making machine, and like I said, they will put you and your family back on a ride within 24 hours if somebody gets decapitated. They've done it before. In 2009, the monorail system that goes into Magic Kingdom, they had a fatal error where they did not switch tracks, so one monorail train was actually backing up while the other one was going forward. Luckily, they weren't going incredibly fast. It caused it to take the life of the pilot of the monorail that got backed into. But because they weren't going extremely fast, it didn't derail the whole train and take the lives of literally hundreds, if not thousands of people. But it was all because just one person didn't switch the tracks, and there was just a communication error and breakdown. He was a 20-year-old person that had just started working at the parks. And like I said, it did crush the area that he was in. In 2003, the Big Thunder Mountain ride had a wheel alignment that came off, and it caused the cart to actually kind of jump up for a second while they were going through the tunnel. There was a guy in the front that was 23 years old, and it did crush him against the ceiling of the ride. He didn't die right away, unfortunately. It was a pretty slow death for this gentleman. And that would be a scary part for me, is because everybody else in this ride, it was through a dark tunnel, really didn't know what even exactly happened. Some reports even said that some of the people in the back thought it was part of the ride for the first few seconds. And obviously it was not. But the wheel assembly fell apart, And when they hit that bump, if you've been on Big Thunder Mountain, you hit that bump and you go through that tunnel, instead of staying on the track, they jumped up off the track and just smacked the ceiling. Because if you've ever been on that ride, it really does feel like you could just stick your hand up and touch the ceiling. You obviously can't, but when it comes off the track, it is easy just to kind of knock your head right against the top of it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that traumatizing list. That was pretty brutal and pretty dark. Enjoy your time at Disney and Universal Parks, just like we did today. The likelihood of this happening, the fact that these parks have been open for almost 100 years at this point, and that's like really the only thing that's ever happened. It was like that pretty short list. Hey, I think your odds are pretty good. I mean, we saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people ride those rides today, and out of all those years, there's a list of less than 10 people. I think your chances are pretty great to be just fine and be okay. Now, the kidnappings that happen around these parks and around these resorts, that's a whole other story, and we've actually talked about it before, but I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future. More than 500 animals were just seized out of an Oklahoma City home. This place was served a search warrant by the Oklahoma City police. They were looking for drugs. They found it, more than 30 pounds of meth, amongst other things. But when the police got there, they were like, there's a lot of animals here. So they had to call the Oklahoma City Animal Control, and they said, hey, there's dozens of animals here. Animal Control got there, and they're like, oh my God, we got to call all the shelters. So right now, all the Oklahoma City shelters are shut down right now, processing more than 500. I think they said the official number was 530-something animals. Dozens of dogs, tons of birds, lizards, snakes, a freaking horse. And here's the thing, though. These guys were meth heads, but apparently they were taking care of the animals. Right now, Animal Control is reporting that the animals are coming out well-fed and in good condition. They were just crammed. I mean, they had like no space in a lot of these areas. I mean, we, for a living, have a wildlife education facility, and we have 250 animals. Now, a lot of our animals are big, obviously, but I could not imagine 530-something animals in a small home. Here's some, been putting up aerial photos of this from News Channel 5. That's an insane amount of animals. I can't imagine the feed bill. They would probably need to be selling the meth to afford to take care of that many animals, especially if they all look to be in good condition, both health and feed-wise. That, hats off to you, meth heads. That's a great job, I guess. I mean, just don't be cramming them in. But I've seen people only have one dog and not take care of it, so I don't even know what to say about that, I guess. But anyhow, there's going to be more stories and developments coming out of this, and I'm sure a lot of these animals are going to need homes. So if you're in the Oklahoma City area, be on the lookout. Be ready to take an animal in if you are an animal lover. Like I said, birds, lizards, a horse, dozens of dogs, and we're still learning more. Go follow the podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads on Spotify and Apple Podcast.